Hey guys, Maelstrom MTG here, and happy Valentine's Day. Today we're going to be talking about a different aspect of budget. Today we're going to be talking about lands. Now, rather than talking about every archetype or every deck you could play, I'm just going to I'm going to make a few videos and I'm going to talk about what you can play in the different types of cards. For example, I'm going to go through colors, I'm going to go through lands, I'm going to go through artifacts, so that's all to come. But we're going to start with probably one of the most important ones, which is lands. Now, the biggest thing I want to stress is you do not need to play fetches. Okay? You just don't need to play fetches. I have maybe 4 or 5 fetches to my name, and I'm able to play Magic at a very competitive level. Anyway, I'm just going to hop right in here. I'm going to talk about the lands. Now, it might hop back and forth between a few different things because I just want to go down the list or else I'll get lost. Arctic Treeline is actually new from Kaldheim and it enters tapped, but it's a snow land, a forest, and a plains. So there are already some other snow duels, but this gives us, if you have fetches, a fetchable snow duel. But there are other reasons why you want forest and plains, and that is why I included this. This is, you don't need fetch lands for this to be a good card. And also, it's a dual land for snow. So if you're trying to build a snow deck, or a deck with at least a snow sub-theme, you're definitely going to want to pick those up. As you can see, they're 36 cents per. Now, prices may vary between versions of the cards because different colors are played more often, but this is one of the cards. Blast Zone is another one. It's a $3.43 card, and it is a very, very good card if you don't want to put the non-land version of it in your deck. So if you just want this, then this can be a very good utility land. It can wipe out certain decks. And you could even be playing this in a monocolored deck because the other one, you need to play it in really more than one color. Next up is the Pathways. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll realize you've probably realized how much I love the Pathways. I love that they were printed. They're no pain, but you also get to choose what you need, and you get to choose when you play it. So if I am playing basically a mono white life gain deck, this is a true story. This is my arena deck. I have a mono white life gain deck, but it runs a single green card. It runs Collected Company. So for that single green card, I'm playing Pathways, and I think I'm also playing Shocklands, but it's because I have them. But those Pathways, if I have a Pathway, I can play that green source, and then I know for the rest of the game I don't need to play any more green sources. So it just enters as an untapped white source at that point. Next up, we're going to be talking about checklands, which is part of the reason why you want things like Arctic Treeline that have a specific land type, like forest or plains. Clifftop Retreat would enter untapped because of Arctic Treeline, because it's technically a plains. These are called checklands. When it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped unless you control a certain type of land. These are very nice. As you can see, this one is $5.82. Some of them are much cheaper. But these are very, very nice cards. It's a very good excuse to have a lot of basics in your deck. Next up are the fast lands. Now, some of these are going to be more expensive. Some of these, I think, reach up to $14. But the newer ones for sure range between $4 to $7 max. Even some of the older ones range. Well, even some of the older ones like Razorverge Thicket is the green-white one is $5. Anyway, next up is our Desert Cycling land. Now there's a almost strictly better version of this also in this list, which we'll get to. but it's a monocolor land, and you can cycle it for 2, or it enters tapped and adds a black. Any tapped land in this deck isn't going to be like superb because it's a tap land in a fast format. But you can decide if it's worth it, because a lot of decks hate drawing lands, which is why people are like, oh, fetch lands are so good, it prevents you from drawing lands. No, it lowers the chance, but it doesn't stop you from drawing a land. And so even if you draw this and cycle it, that's 2 mana that you're down in your turn, but you still get to draw past your land. Anyway, next up is Evolving Wilds and Fabled Passage. I'm gonna get so much shit in the comments if people really watch this and they're gonna be like, no, Evolving Wilds sucks, or Fabled Passage is only standard or pioneer card. And I'm just gonna respond with this. If you really are in the mindset of, oh, I need to thin my deck right now, play Evolving Wilds or Fabled Passage. If you think that you can slow your game plan enough where you can play cards like this, then go for it. It entering tapped is almost going... Think about it like this. If you were to have a land enter untapped, and then it would enter tapped, it's the same as if you were to draw a land, but pay 1 to draw a separate card. So, for the cycling lands that cost 1 mana, it's the same outcome. It's just these will filter your deck, but also these are in here for things like filling your graveyard. That's the biggest thing in here for why these are in here. That is an argument for fetch lands that I cannot really go against, because filling your graveyard is very important for some decks. But Evolving Wilds and Fabled Passage do it just as well. It's just the land will enter tapped. Fabled Passage sometimes will enter untapped. I was going to mention the actual basic fetch land, but that one actually is more expensive than some of the fetch lands, I think. Anyway, so Fairy Conclave next up is a man land, and it's just enters tapped. You can add for a color, which is really important that it's colored mana. Then you can pay mana to turn it into a creature with some abilities. Next up is the 1-drop cycling land. It enters tapped, but you can cycle it. And so that is very good. You can fill your graveyard, you can draw past your lands, but you can also have those lands if you need them. And it's very nice. Frostmarsh is our next Snow Duel, and this one doesn't actually have the island swamp types, but it's still a good card if you're trying to make a snow mana base. But it also enters tapped, and so you could run 8 of these, but if you do, then your deck's probably going to be fairly slow. But if that's what your deck can do, if it's like a snow control deck, go for it. These ones are a bit more expensive, even though I would say they're arguably worse. They're helpful against like Landwalk, but the other, I'd say that these are better just for the fact that you can use them for other things. Anyway, these are still very good, and you can definitely play them. Next up is Gemstone Mine, which is one of the cornerstone lands for a combo deck. You'll see that this is almost a $7 card, and actually so is Fabled Passage, but that's up to you. But Gemstone Mine is almost a $7 card, but if you play it, you can play it probably as a 2, 3, or even a 4 of in your deck, and it will give you any color untapped for 3 turns. And for some combo decks where you really need that's fine. And that will be one of the most expensive lands you actually have to buy. The rest can essentially be basics, or other lands on this list. Next up is something that there's actually not really more of. It's basically the only one in its cycle. It was originally printed in Future Sight, where they printed a lot of different weird lands. But this one is an untapped source that adds specifically colorless, So that helps if you want something like Tron or red or green and your opponent gains a life. Now the opponent gaining life, you obviously don't really want this in an aggro deck like Burn, but you could definitely play this in a deck like green red or green Tron. Now Tron used to run this, it doesn't anymore, but you could, depending on your version, you could run this. Next up is Gruul Turf. This is a very slow card in Modern and is very vulnerable to graveyard destruction. Not graveyard destruction, land destruction, but it is still playable. Like, this is still definitely playable. This is, you can play this with cards like, Blood Sun to make lands lose all abilities other than mana abilities. So this will enter untapped as a 2-drop and you don't have to bounce anything. You can also play this with Lotus Field in the same deck. Or you can play it in Amulet Titan, where it'll enter untapped, so you can get even more profit. Next up is a 2-drop cycling land, and I'm going to be talking, not 2-drop, but 2-color. And I call these bicycle lands. Now, you can, there are a few different cycling lands on here. I think there are a total of like 4, but like that's just because you can use them really well. But these are very nice. They have those 2 land types, and they do enter tapped. This particular one, Irrigated Farmland, would be amazing for control if you're trying to get on a budget. You see, it's only a 50-cent card. Next up, I just want to take a moment here to just to say, there's no reason you can't run basics in your deck. There's absolutely no reason. There's 0 reason that you cannot run basics in your deck. Now, you need to have usually like at least a few basics, at least 1 basic. You know, you gotta at least have 1 basic. That way, if your card is Assassin's Trophied, if it's Cleansing Wildfired, if it's hit by like Ghost Quarters or Field of Ruin, you need something to be able to fetch if they try to destroy your thing. But also, there are many decks that just can run basic lands, and people just forget about them when they think about Modern. They're like, oh, it has to be expensive. But yeah, you can run basics. I just wanted to take that moment. Also, a real quick shout out to Snow Covered Basics. There's almost no reason not to run these over normals. Because there's only one Snow Hate card in existence, and it is kind of bad. But this is definitely a like, it was reprinted, so now when they're like over $1 per, now they're 50 cents. If you have the budget, upgrade your basic base to Snowlands. Next up is Needle Spires. They are the dual colored manlands, and a few of them can be closer to like, I don't think they really get past $4. This one's 29 cents. Port Town, I personally am not a fan of this land, because I like to keep really risky hands, but you can definitely put this in a deck where you're able to confidently say, yeah, it'll enter untapped. This is 179, and it went down actually because the Pathways got printed and everybody's switching over to Pathways. Ramunap Ruins, by the way, when I mention these, you can look up, like, I think these are called Reveal Lands or Shadow Lands, but a lot of these have other colors. I'm just talking about, I just picked one of each of them. Next up is Ramunap Ruins, and it's a desert and probably one of the most notable ones. The other one would probably be the blue one, just because it mills. But this is going to be played in like an aggro deck. I play this sometimes if I'm playing Mono Red Burn. But it's a very nice card to get extra utility out of your lands. And it also can produce colorless mana. Now, the ability to produce colorless mana alongside normal mana is a lot better than a lot of people give it credit for, because that allows you to run things that specifically require colorless mana. Next up is our last cycling land, I actually believe, and it is Raugun Triome, which is Island Mountain Plains. That is a lot of stuff to have on one card. It enters the battlefield tapped. It can add for any of those colors, and it has Cycling 3. These are amazing. I usually, if I'm playing a 2 or 3 color deck or even more, I try to have at least one Triome, just because it allows you to have that dual land for cheap. This is $6.75. I usually only include like 1 or 2 in my deck, and it just allows me to cycle my cards away. Next up is River of Tears, and this is I believe this was also in Future Sight. It was one of those weird lands. But it can give you blue mana, and a lot of times if you want to say, yeah, I need blue, but then sometimes you actually need to have black, you can just decide to play around when you play your land. This does not get affected by fetch lands, Evolving Wilds, or Fabled Passage. You actually have to play the land. Next up is Savage Lands, and it's a tap land, but it produces 3. So it's kind of like the Triomes, but you can't cycle them. They don't have the land types, and they're also like a 1/7 of the price, a 1/6 of the price. But these are good. Like, they're not the best card in existence, obviously, but you can easily play these. Next up are the meme. They're the Guild Gates. I love these cards so much. I'm going to build a Modern budget deck for Guild Gates, and you will enjoy it. You'll sit back and enjoy it. You have to. It's Guild Gates. These cards enter tapped. They aren't boring lands, because if you're playing them, you suddenly tell your opponent, oh, I might have cards that have Gate synergy in my deck. So if you play this over just a normal tap land, then they might think either, oh man, this person's really on a huge budget, a tiny budget, or they might think, oh, this person's playing Gates, and then they suddenly have to play around every single Gate card. Silent Clearing, this one is $6.53, but some of the prices vary. I believe we're finishing the cycle later this year in Modern Horizons 2, but these cards just get extra utility out of your mana base. They're really nice cards, and they provide you the mana you need, and then eventually turn into card draw. Snow-Covered Island I already talked about. Sunken Hollow, these are the battle lands where from Zendikar, they enter tap unless you control 2 or more basics. And so what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to also make an excuse to run a very heavy basic base, but it's also going to be an island or swamp. So I could very easily see you playing something like 4 Sunken Hollows and 4 Drowned Catacomb. Drowned Catacomb's the check land. And if you do that, then you can just run the rest as basics. And that would make sense to me. Next one is something that people really are going to say, nope, that's Pioneer, or nope, that's Standard. And even then, it's iffy. I disagree. I think this is a very good type of card, and they're the Temples, and I don't think any of them are really over 50 cents. Like, you can get any of the playsets for like $2 total of the Temples. Now, I will say that the decks that you're going to want to play this in are the kind of decks that are either control decks or slow decks like that still are able to delay the opponent with other cards, or decks that are combo decks or that are trying to just search out and just trying to find a specific card to get your game going. Next up is a 94-cent card called Urza's Tower. There are 2 other lands that go with this that create a deck called Tron. Now, if you don't know what it is, by turn 3 you can have 7 mana if you control all 3 of them, so the deck is built around getting those out. And so the mana base for Tron is very budget. You really don't have to run fetch lands. You really shouldn't run fetch lands. You just run these and then some other lands, and then the part of Tron that can get you is the main board. And so but there are always budget options, almost always. Next up is Watervale Cavern. Also, Urza and Tron is a deck that you could easily build if you want your lands to 100%, like if you're trying to like start a budget deck and then slowly upgrade everything. Tron, those three sets of lands will stay even as you upgrade into more expensive. Watervale Cavern is a Kamigawa land, and everybody either hates Kamigawa, absolutely loves Kamigawa, or some weird mix of both. But these lands are kind of exactly that emotion, because you have specifically colorless mana. Then you can add whatever color you want, but then it doesn't untap, which is debatably bad. But you could also just see, it's just like your spell costs one more, and it's like reverse foretell. It's like you're exerting your land. But if you're playing a combo deck or a control deck, you could easily play these. These are very nice. They enter untapped, and they are really good. I actually discovered this land after I built that Dimir control deck on my channel. If I do a rehash of it, I might actually include these cards. Anyway, the last cards I have for today are Yavimaya Coast, which are the Pain lands. And some of these are more expensive because they haven't been reprinted. I hope that they actually do get reprinted in the near future. But some of the newer ones are really cheap. This one's 99 cents. And so these are really nice because they also provide you colorless, and they also give you a specific color. You will lose life from it, but it's very minimal. This is basically just like what you're going to get out of your Horizon lands, except you can't turn it into a card later on, but also you can tap it without losing life if you tap for colorless. Anyway, those are the lands, and really, you can play without fetch lands. It's very easy. You just have to devote some time into looking at what you want. You can play with more basics than you probably think you can. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, if you enjoyed this, please hit that like button. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe. And if you have any ideas for lands that you did not see put into this video, please let me know below. Anyway, have a nice Valentine's Day, and I will see you tomorrow.